Okay. Kristen's going to get us up there on the web, but I think we're live out on YouTube now.
So we're on the page now too.
Okay. Thanks, Kristen. All right, Mark, we're good.
Okay, great. I'd like to call to order the Monday, May 10th, 2021 Board of Trustees meeting with the first agenda item being any public participation. Jeff, I don't know if you have anything or anything came in between meetings?
Check really quickly. I don't have anything.
Okay. Did you get anything between the meetings or?
No, we got one comment about on some stuff on the long range plan committee that they wanted the comments to go to the long range plan committee meeting. So I will put them there just about the preliminary expenses.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay, the first item for today's meeting is a budget presentation. Who's going to be doing that?
On page 2 of the packet, the proposed budget for the 2021-22 fiscal year is $4.5 million, with the levy portion of the budget remaining flat at $4.2 million. We're proposing a 0% increase in the levy, and we believe that along with the underlying budget assumptions, this represents a sound plan for 2021-22. We were able to identify savings in various areas without compromising our level of service to the community. Savings in electricity costs due to the new HVAC system, reductions in some materials as more patrons shift to electronic formats, and reduced spending for in-person programming due to the pandemic allows us to continue to invest in electronic resources, online access to research and investing tools, and career and educational support. This plan also includes continued support for curbside pickup and book and media bundles, which became essential during the pandemic and continue to be very popular. I don't know if anybody has any specific questions about any of the items in the budget.
I don't have any questions, but I'm glad that we're presenting a 0% levy.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had one question, which was I just want to get on the record. So the personnel assumptions year to year do not include any personnel reduction, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I have no questions. I mean, the format is consistent with what we've done in previous years, and I think it's clear and it's well done.
Okay. Any other questions?
I don't have any questions, but I, as a new member of the board, I valued the discussion we had in developing this budget. So.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any other questions from board members? Okay, I too want to say thanks for staff for putting this together. It was a good process, and I'm happy that we were able to present a 0% growth in the tax levy. Okay, so moving right along, I'm going to go to the previous meeting minutes. I will take a motion on those.
I'll make a motion to accept the previous meeting's minutes.
Okay.
I'll second it. I'll
Great.
second it.
Okay, great. Any discussion? All those in favor, please just by raising your hand. Any opposed? Okay, motion carries. Financial report. Treasurer's update.
Okay. The revenue and expense report through April consistently shows underspending in most of the categories. Budget savings continues to grow, and expenses are now tracking at about 9% under budget. I kind of took a look at what our fiscal year end might look like, and I'm projecting that we'll probably end the year at roughly 8% under budget, or about a $350,000 savings. This savings will be added to the fund balance and could be used for future capital projects or whatever decisions the board makes. One other thing I want to mention, it's not included in the report because we just received it last week in May. But we received a little bit more than $6,800 from Upper Hudson, bringing our total for state aid for fiscal year 2021 to 24,404. So just over what we had budgeted at 24,000. That'll show up in the May report. One other thing I do want to mention, and I have to apologize for it, the dates on page 10, the dates for the prior year say 4/30/21, and you know, both the last two columns, it should have been 4/30/20. So sorry that I missed that. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing to anybody.
Great, thanks for that report or update. Any questions?
I have a question, and I'm not sure if Jeff or if Shari can answer it, but do you have any sense of how much of that percentage of the tracking under budget is due to COVID, or what, or is this a usual level of under budget given other years of the library, if that makes sense, what I'm asking?
I think it's pretty consistent with past years. We do tend to have a fair amount of savings in personnel costs, salary lines. You know, that's just a hard number to budget, and with turnover, we just don't know. It's hard to project that. You know, we did have some overspending in certain lines due to COVID for sure, cleaning supplies and so on, which probably balanced out with some savings in other areas like in-person programming. I don't know, anything else you want to add, Jeff?
I guess I'd just say that, you know, you can just look at from a gut check, you can look at the personnel report and know that there's a number of unfilled positions, and that's absolutely due to COVID, right? So we were, you know, we kept that under because we weren't sure what the expenses were going to be. The number of hours that the library had was reduced for a significant portion of the year. So there were just positions that we didn't refill because we were able to move things around and cover what we needed to cover. So I think, you know, ending up at 8 is probably like Sherry's saying, a balance between those two things. Like, it definitely increased spending in some areas, but also a greater than normal underspending on personnel, I would say.
Thank you. And the other thing I just throw out there is for future discussion or consideration by the board is to potentially open a fund where you would actually siphon, I won't say siphon, but place some of those savings into an actual account that is for capital improvement.
Yep.
So
I just want to clarify, you're not talking about a fund. You're talking about a separate checking account, yes?
No, I'm talking about a fund. The school district has it. If you look at the school district, that when I was on the board, for at least an account, a line was created up to $10 million, I believe, for capital projects. And if you look at, because I looked at their budget, for the budget vote, that fund has already maxed out at 10 million. I believe they opened a second one because by law they have to keep their fund balance under 4%. We don't have that same requirement, but if in fact the savings are being earmarked, or at least part of the savings are earmarked for capital projects, it may be, again, the full board can discuss it, whether or not it is prudent to have an account. I mean, obviously you want some of that cash available for, you know, other things, emergencies that might arise. So you don't want to tie up your entire fund balance. But I know Shari just mentioned could be put aside for capital projects. I think that's come up before. So I'm not sure what the pluses and minuses of the library doing that, but I know it was an actual fund. It's not a checking account, it's a fund.
Okay.
So for a future discussion, it's just something I throw out.
Okay.
Yeah, we could maybe finance committee, we could talk about that. Okay, any other questions on the financial or treasurer update? Okay, going to the personnel report.
Do we have to make a motion?
Oh, we have to
Need a
make
motion.
I make a motion to accept the financial report, including the disbursements that need to be made as presented in the board packet.
Great. Any second?
I'll second.
Okay, thanks, Michelle. Okay, all those in favor, any discussion? All those in favor signify by raising your hand or saying aye. Okay, any opposed or abstentions? Okay, motion carries. Now we'll move on to the personnel report and personnel actions.
Okay, so you're seeing, if you look on the report, there's only one action that I'm requesting. It's requesting the permission to backfill a part-time librarian one. Luke was applied and was hired into the full-time librarian one position. He's one of our existing part-time staff, part-time librarians. And so now he's moved over to the full-time position. So the part-time position has now come open.
Okay, that's pretty self-explanatory. Any
Yep.
questions for Jeff on that?
I will make a
Jeff,
motion
this
to
one's only
accept the
7 hours a
report
week.
as presented on page 16 of the board packet if there are no questions.
Okay, just
I'll
one
second.
quick question.
Wait, I think Harmeet has a question here.
Harmeet's got a question, yeah.
Oh, sorry. Jeff, this one's only 7 hours a week?
9 hours a week, the part-time, 7.67. Yeah. So it's one evening and the weekend in rotation.
Okay.
So it's our Friday night coverage and the weekend rotation. So you'll see that there are, if this position is approved, there are at the bottom of the report, there's 2 part-time librarian ones. There's one that's a little bit more of there's a 9-hour and a 7-hour. We're probably going to move those individual shifts around to try to cover, where we need the staff people now. But those would be
Okay,
it's just
thanks.
7 hours a week.
Okay, Mary May, I think made a motion on the personnel report. Any second?
Second.
Okay, thanks, Caroline. Any discussion further? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand or saying aye. Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, that motion is carried. We'll move right into the director's report. Jeff.
Okay, so just really quickly, I'll mention that we have a new contractor who's come and looked at the space for that metal awning that we really wanted to put in over the garage last year, and the new contractor has some really good ideas about where to anchor that to the sides and how to put that up. So we're waiting for the quote for that. So I don't have anything to report as far as the quote is concerned, but that's in progress. So I did want to mention that's, we received a substantial gift from a patron who wanted to continue to contribute to curbside pickup because the patron felt it was significantly improved service. And I think that could be putting that money towards that could be a way to honor that gift. There is a tree scheduled to come down over on the Delaware Avenue. I know people, tree cutting is kind of a big deal, but this one is mostly dead maple, and it is coming down. It's right on the property line between us and our neighbors. So everybody's interested. Tree services have been much in demand in Bethlehem for the past year or so. So we're in line. I don't have an exact date yet, but that's on the way. And then just as a quick report, I just put a report in of all the things that Scoopy the tractor has been doing out there. It's one of those tools that once the staff and maintenance figured out all the ways to be using, it's probably one of the things we should have purchased years ago. Just made a lot of their jobs just a ton easier. They were able to get some landscaping work done that it would have involved digging out piles and piles of rocks, and this thing is just perfectly designed to do that. So they were able to get some pretty significant landscaping up on the front of the property done. So just want to report back on that. And really moving around the empty sheds as we reconfigure our returns. I don't really have anything else that would drag a shed around, maybe the truck. So that's been really helpful.
I have a question about the tree coming down. I am not suggesting this. I'm simply asking, did we have any professional review to see if there was any chance of saving it?
We had our arborist come and look at the tree, and he's absolutely, that tree needs to come down. Like it's shedding branches. Unfortunately, it's over
I'm
a
glad we
neighbor's
took that
driveway.
step.
Yeah, you bet. It was really, of all the trees, this is the one that makes me nervous.
Okay.
And we tried to have it taken down last fall, and just with the incredible amount of trees that need to be taken down last year because of the windstorm. It just didn't happen before the weather got terrible. So we had to wait till the spring, and now we're waiting for this thing to come back down. So
All right,
yes, you bet.
great.
We are going to be, Division of Library Development came out with expectation that all public libraries will meet their minimum number of hours, and we were already in compliance and will continue to be in compliance with that moving forward. So nothing to worry about there. It's not really in the news, but if you were to hear about that through an email or something, I want you to know that we're in compliance with our minimum hours, which is 55 hours a week, by the way. So that's our minimum number of hours that we're required to be open by the state, depending on our population. Chat features going well. Just a couple of databases. We added a new database for crafts. We've had a lot of our online programs that have been successful have been craft based. So we're putting a little bit of money towards a database that will provide video instruction about a lot of different crafting techniques. So we're excited that that's live. And then the Friends of the Library, I always like to report on their activities. They've been looking, they're working on the book sale. That's of course coming up this weekend on Saturday, as long as the weather holds. They'll be out there, but they were purchasing for us bags for curbside that had their logo printed on that, and that was getting a little pricey. So they purchased a large stamp. So the volunteers have been coming in to the library and stamping bags for both the book sale and for the library to give out during curbside. So they'll have a Friends of the Library logo on that, and people will know that the bags are being sponsored by the Friends of the Library. So that's nice. Lots of good programs. You can read through my report, the Coffee and Conversation, that Humanities New York grant, and that relationship continues to bear fruit, and we have some good programs. And again, we're getting a lot of these programs up, getting the videos edited and then put up on our YouTube channel, which is continuing to see some nice use, much more use in the pandemic era than in the pre-pandemic era. So that's good. Lots of fun with Earth Day celebration, included some pictures in there. Tori worked with the Ellesmere PTO. We always like to work with the PTOs and the school groups and, to celebrate Earth Day. So that was, several of the librarians were involved in that. There was a story time outside. So it's just nice to see some of those in-person outdoor programs starting to come back a little bit. And we have more of that scheduled for this summer. So just expect to see more and more of that as we move forward and the weather gets nicer. Did want to mention the new cash register. We'll talk about later, probably when we're into library fines, but we're working on a new credit card processing cash register. So that's necessary and needed, and will integrate a bunch of the functions together. Not completely into a single point of sale system, but it will certainly make it a lot easier on the staff as they process payments at the checkout desk. And then just included a quick graph there on page 20, just so you can see as we increase in-person browsing, holds decrease, right? Because when we can't be open for in-person browsing, more people are doing holds. So just you can watch the interplay of that. Nothing unexpected there, but you can see kind of in the timeline where those pinch points happened, where services were restricted. And then just really quickly, I wanted to mention that Kristen is doing more printing inside but that won't be in our financial report yet, but there'll be, she's doing some printing on our internal copier. So we pay a per page fee for those copies. And so you'll see an increase in that. I think overall we'll be saving money. We certainly have the equipment, but normally we would be sending out these larger summer reading flyers. We would be sending those out for printing, and we'd be doing those in-house. So you'll see the printing cost versus copier lines. You'll see it will look a little wonky. We're just shifting cost from one line to the other. Lots and lots of committee work. I wanted to take special note. This is the month. If you wanted to see huge increases in circulation, if you like to see big percentage increases, how about a 237,000% increase in interlibrary loan? So that's always fun. That's because this time last year things were pretty dire. So the actual increases in borrowed from other libraries. We borrowed 7,000 items from other libraries last month. So we're still seeing very robust holds even though we're doing in-person browsing. So those numbers still look good, but we've got good increases all across the board, of course, when you compare to with the library being closed. And, we were in a purely e-circulation status this time last year. Of course, the circulation is going to look great. So it's nice to see after a year of so many declining numbers, we get to see a month of all positive numbers. So that feels nice. And then some modest decreases actually in ebook use, which is interesting as, just last year, that was our sole way that people were circulating and using the library content. So those numbers have eased off. But even with that being true, the e-audiobook use is still up almost 20%. So even with that, so that's demonstrative of a major shift in the way that audiobooks are being consumed by our patrons. So that shift away from CDs is not going to stop. So it is just, lots of cars still have CD players. We will still have CD audiobooks, but the stress, where we would be putting most of our future money into that collection is going to be in the e-collection because it's driven by commuting and lots of cars no longer have CD players in them. So that's that collection will be more and more and more in e-collection going forward. So those are just a little bit of explanation about those statistics. So again, if you look at the statistics, there's a big drop in streaming video use where you think last April, lots of people were using Canopy and Hoopla to stream video content from the library. Less so now. I'm taking that, generally speaking, as a positive sign that there's a significant recovery going on. Electric use looks pretty normal, as does the gas use. And then I always like to just note it's still Overdrive continues to be our biggest circulator. And then on page 24, if you look at circulation versus digital, the top left chart, all you need to see is the blue and green bars. That just shows you physical circulation versus electronic circulation. So as much as we talk about electronic circulation, and it is a very significant portion of our circulation at this point, still the majority of the circulation is that blue bar. That's the physical circulation. So as soon as we have physical circulation is still king.
Just wanted
Question.
to ask about the new chat function and what kinds of questions are you looking to ask there, and how are you managing that? Is that like reference questions, research, or is it broader than that?
Well, it is broader than that because a lot of, yes, it's absolutely reference questions, but it's also just the questions that the librarians would get at the information desk. It could be anything from, hours or how do I questions. Not so much where's the bathroom questions that we get in person, but, just all the way from there to a little bit more in depth. Every time I walk by, that was the interesting part of trying to integrate that because it's another service point that we have to pay attention to when we're at the desk and trying to manage a phone and the desk, and with the children's desk, the main reference desk, a rover, which we need a lot of the times, and then still someone out at the front of the library. That's a lot of service points for those librarians. They're stretched pretty thin on that stuff. So it's not like maybe in a traditional time you could say, oh, we're assigning someone to pay attention to the chat function and they're going to be upstairs. But much of the time, there's time to be able to manage that, and they're working out their work process to do that. And I think they're being very successful.
So are lots of local libraries already using it, or are we kind of out there on our own?
No, chat functions have been around for a long time, and we had a product a long time ago, and it met with kind of tepid use. And as you're looking at the cost, this came along, was sort of bundled with the text function that we added for curbside pickup. So it was, why not try it? If it was just a few extra dollars, throw it in there and see if it takes. And if it's successful, then it makes perfect sense to keep it. We'll look at the statistics. We'll see if it's meeting a need as the library opens back up, and we'll continue to evaluate that product. So
okay, great.
But I think they're getting some more in-depth questions, and it allows the time and space to do a little bit of that research. And then you can also always say, oh, this question is going to be longer. Let me answer that, and I can email you back, or it gives you those options. So,
Jeff, I was returning some books, and I noticed the number of sheds is smaller, and that's
Yes.
because, just in case people notice, it's because you've collapsed the amount of time that things have to be
sure, absolutely,
isolated.
yeah. We're gonna, and that is going to continue as the sort of quarantines are being eliminated across the system. For us, we're still likely, at least for the next little while, even if we eliminate quarantine, we used to take returns right there by the circulation desk and just check them in continuously throughout the day. We're still planning on batching everything. Once it, just have emptied out in the morning, have the maintenance staff move it onto carts and just check it in sort of one time during the day. So that's, we'll still continue to use the shed for a little while, and it may be a good opportunity for us to talk about replacing that existing external book drop, which is, I know we've talked about before, it is a genuine nightmare. So the maintenance guys are super happy to never go back to that thing ever, because it is in bad shape. So,
And I had a question about the summer reading program. Do you ever work with the PTAs, particularly for the elementary grades, and getting the word out about that? Or is there electronic material that can go out as a safe paper? Or again, my first year going into like a sort of, maybe there was summer reading program, but I was so overwhelmed last year, I didn't really pay attention. Tell me how that interaction might happen or does happen.
Right. So under normal circumstances, we push into, our goal is to get into every, and Chris could say this better than me, but I think it's into a majority of the classrooms in the elementary school. Just get in there, have our librarians go in and talk about summer reading program. But this year we're printing those flyers. Kristen, nod if I'm correct. And then we're going to be putting those flyers and getting them distributed sort of through a backpack push out through the schools this year. So that's, so yes, we absolutely will work with anybody who will work with us to get notice about the summer reading program. But yep, go ahead, Chris. Thank you.
I was going to say that the librarians are already in the process of setting up virtual visits to the classrooms. They work with the school librarian, so they'll be promoting summer reading face-to-face with the kids virtually. I shouldn't say face-to-face, but through, virtual means. So, yeah, we use any method we can to get the word out.
Thanks, Chris.
Jeff, I just wondered, you mentioned that the numbers were lower for Canopy and Hoopla.
Yep.
But I assume they're just lower. They're not so low to question the cost of the subscription.
No, the nice part about both of those is that it's a pay per use. So as use drops, cost goes down, right? So that's with those two things. So actually I think that's why we were so willing to step into that last year. We were absolutely filling a need. And I think we'll continue to evaluate, just how are they being used now? I think we don't have any real world statistics yet, just because last year was so wonky. Hopefully we will find our level, but again, because of the way Canopy's structured, if it's serving a need, I don't see any reason to get rid of it. It's not, the fear is that it's going to kill the budget. It's, you don't know what it's going to be. I think it finds a level. People find the product. There are certain people that just really love it, and it's great. So I don't see any reason to get rid of it at all.
Good, great, thanks.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions for Jeff on the director's report? Okay, great. Well, thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
UHLS report now. Lisa, I don't know if you have anything for us.
Well, we're heavy into the review phase for the services committee. We're looking at the annual program nominations right now. I would say a very robust return. I think we have 16 applications, more adult than youth, which surprised me. So we'll roll right from that into construction grants. So lots of meetings. There were some very minimal 2020 construction funds that came back, as I had mentioned last month, like less than $1,000. So we just continue to divide them up among, I think there's only 2 libraries that aren't fully funded up to their rate, their percentage. So it's dwindling, so that's good. So we can start the next one. But other than that, and next month is the virtual awards celebration. So I haven't heard that they're going to send the invitation out. Have you heard anything, Jeff?
I have not heard that
They're
yet.
getting it out. So look for it because you should be getting it. So maybe Jeff and I are going to be doing that. I don't know.
Yeah, right. And we're doing the same thing over on the administration committee. We're reviewing the trustee of the year and volunteer of the year.
Lisa, when you're
Yes.
talking about dribs and drabs coming back for the construction grants, are these projects that were completed under budget? Is that why you're getting money back?
We don't typically, at least in the time I've been on the board, that has not really happened before. Maybe one other time. And it was because a library didn't kind of jump through all the hoops to be able to move forward with their project. I think in this case, it's probably more COVID related. What do you think, Jeff?
I think so. And again, the other source of that, sometimes there are funds that are redistributed back from whole other library systems because
Other systems, yeah.
yeah. So
Oh,
they don't
Often.
but it happens. And then Lisa's committee gets these little tiny little bits of money that have to be distributed around the project.
Okay.
I think
'Cause
this
the
is like the fourth time this year this has
Yeah.
happened.
It
So.
seems complicated by COVID, I think is absolutely
Yeah.
the reason. But the bulk of those funds would go back, of course, to Long Island and New York City, right? Where there's more population, so there's more money. And so but for a lot of smaller libraries across upstate, getting the matching funds together to do the project is a major hurdle, so
Mhm.
it's that same, just like the schools, the schools that can match get more of the money. So.
Thanks.
Yep. Great. Thanks, Lisa. Any questions from the board on that? Hearing none. Moving to new business. The first order of new business is the conflict of interest policy. Hope everyone got a chance to take a look at it. It's pretty extensive. It's pretty strong too. I looked at it pretty carefully. So do people have questions on that policy?
So the reason you're not getting an inline rewrite is because it is a ground floor rewrite of the policy.
Yeah.
We contacted the library's contract attorney, and she based this on the guidance from the comptroller's office about what a nonprofit. Yep.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that it has a lot of very specific things in it, because I think it was 2012, maybe 2013. New York State put a new law into effect that said basically all not-for-profits and other types of organizations, which we are one, has to have a series of provisions in the conflict of interest policy. So I think I just wanted to say that there's some stuff in there that might not be obvious or seem always applicable to the library, but that is what it is. And I defer to our attorney's drafting of that. I've had to draft them and it's not fun. So anyway, just thought I'd say that.
No, thanks.
And the policy committee did review it and comment on it before it came to the full board.
Yeah. Yep.
I'll say that I just kind of, I brought up the point that I think it has to comply with this law, but in this case, I tend to defer to the attorney instead of try to muck up that work.
So does anyone have any questions on any particular part of the policy or a lack of understanding of it? Okay, well, then I'll take a motion for its approval then.
Can I ask a quick question?
Of course.
Jeff, did anyone in your staff look at this?
We've looked at it. Yeah.
And overall feeling, or is it a good, is it a positive step, or is it, what were the general thoughts?
I think it's like I think Caroline's message is right. Like there seems like a lot of parts of this that may not directly apply to us, but it is very strong, and I think it's appropriately strong. So there are some other policies once this goes into place, which I'm imagining we're about to do. There are some other policies that we've written that may not need to exist because this really covers all of those aspects of sort of gifts, the gifts policy or something like that. It really gets handled very explicitly in here. So.
Thank you.
You bet.
Mark, you asked for a motion?
Yeah, sure.
So moved.
Okay, any second?
I'll second.
Okay, thanks, Michelle. Further discussion or questions? Okay, all right, we'll move to voting. So all those in favor of adopting this conflict of interest policy, please signify by raising their hand or saying aye. Okay, any opposed or abstention? Okay, the motion carries, the policy is effective or is passed. So updates to the phased reopening plan, Jeff.
Yep. So this is on page 34 to 39.
Yep.
You'll see where sort of we had a nice conversation with the staff at our last staff meeting about how these phases aren't hard walls, like we sort of move through the phase as we implement that and sort of declaring that we're at stage 4 now. And we are at the beginning of stage 4. And because of that, when we wrote, phase 4 months ago and then revised it again, we know more now than we did then about what we're actually, the very specifics of what we're going to be doing. So I went through and the portions that are marked in yellow have been updated. There's some parts that we've struck out. And this is my recommendation for what we do with phase 4 and then a little bit in phase 5. I'm imagining as we move into phase 5, there'll even be more changes to phase 5 as we get there. But I did want to bring this update and make this match with what we're actually doing in practice. We've always said right from the beginning, this is a living document because we continue to find out more and we figure out what we can be doing and integrating the updates from state and the CDC and the Albany County Health Department. So.
Any questions on that? Concerns?
I thought it was good. It was interesting to read that we're moving forward in some things and we don't have to clean every little square inch of the building. Yes. Things like that. How do the staff feel about the things as we start to roll forward?
It's interesting because a lot of the cleaning guidelines for the whole, just the CDC cleaning guidelines for the pandemic, our maintenance staff was doing before the pandemic even started. Like they really are very diligent about how they're cleaning the surfaces in the library. We've certainly updated them to make sure we're using the approved cleaners, some of which we were, and some of which were, not on the approved list. But even there, the new CDC guidance is for most surfaces, soap and water are acceptable. The chances of transmission. So just the whole necessity to be like that should be putting your attention there only is reduced, and that's what is expressed here. And I think we actually, as a library, we did some really good moves early on, focused on those MERV filters and getting the air, making sure we have sufficient airflow in the library. That's now showing to be where the majority of our efforts should have been put. So we weren't over focusing on cleaning to under focus on that. We were focusing on a lot of different things, but it is nice to have some more official guidance as we need. The whole point of when we didn't know how this was transmitted, the concern about that if it was surface transmission that's aimed right at our business as a library, it was going to be hard to overcome. So just glad to see that's just less and less of a concern. But at the same time, we're reintroducing computers. So the 3 computers are in the library on tables. There's chairs and tables for people to use computers at in the library. So we have to make sure we're, appropriately cleaning those keyboards, and the cleans are available for people who have extra concerns, but we're cleaning them once a day diligently.
I was fine with the overall phase 4 document. I did notice that cleaning was mentioned on page 34, 40, and my notes either say 40 through 55 or 40 and 55. And just to encourage the library to be mindful of cleaning. Again, I don't know about all the CDC regulations and what's being rolled back and what's not, but I did, as I read through it, I made a mental note of to ask about cleaning. And then when you talk about computers, which might be in front of people's faces, even though people are masked, to be mindful and to not necessarily pull back beyond what you think is prudent in terms of cleaning.
Yeah, I think and thank you. And we are exactly doing that. So I think the maintenance staff at the library has been doing yeoman's work this whole year, and they're not pulling all the way back, but we are starting to, be less concerned if someone picks a book up in the library and puts it back on the shelf. The same thing happens in the grocery store. You just put something and put it back on the shelf. It doesn't need to be quite so concerned about that. We need to be, more mindful of the masks, making sure we're keeping distant from people in the building. That tends to be better payoff for that stuff. So, but we're not abandoning cleaning. Absolutely not.
And also for the folks know that we so much appreciate, everyone's efforts, but particularly the maintenance staff in terms of that aspect of the plan as we've rolled through different phases.
You bet.
And Jeff, I wondered, it says we're going to phase in seating.
Yep.
That's the thing that I've heard most from patrons, especially right now, because students want to get in and study for AP exams. Yeah.
Yep.
Is there any possibility that it would happen soon, or you think we're still a ways out from it?
So there's going to be some, that's, I was going to talk about that. It's one of the things I'll tell you here. Normally I tell the staff first, but they'll hear on this and I'll tell them tomorrow. We're going to be putting out some more seating. That's what, I was sort of scoping around the library. It's not going to be anything like the traditional amount of seating. And, and we know during AP and finals, every horizontal surface on the library on some Saturdays is occupied with people studying. Taking a bunch of unvaccinated children and shoving them in a room together seems like a terrible idea right now, but we will be making some seating available for people to study, probably less group study, more individual study, one chair per table, keeping that distance. And we are, I bought a bunch of tables for outside underneath the tent too, so that if I wish the weather could be just 10 degrees warmer. It's awful cold to be sitting outside studying right now. So I understand the pressure. I have absolute sympathy for those students. There just really are not a lot of places to go in the community right now for doing that studying. But we're gonna bring back some seating into the library. We're gonna do it judiciously, and I'll just sort of march along. But traditionally we would have taken the whole community room and turned it into a massive study hall. Study hall at the library. We would have taken the boardroom, the community room, and that is not going to happen this year, even in time for regular finals in June. But we will not be so strict about no place to sit down in the library. There's going to be people who can come in, and that's we're at 30 people right now. I know the state is easing those capacity guidelines right across the board. Again, that doesn't directly apply to us, but we kind of try to take that guidance as our guide. Libraries don't get attention in that way from anybody, but the concept that we're limiting the capacity of the library at any given time at 30, it basically means we haven't hit that limit in several weeks since we went to 30 people. It's not a thing.
Yeah,
but
good.
As we bring back in seating, here's what I don't want to get into. A lot of the libraries are limiting people to like half an hour. I am not interested in chasing people around the library and saying, do you have the right color wristband on when you came in the library? You've been here a half an hour, you have to get out. I don't think that works. I think it's an unnecessary conflict. I think we have a good reason not to want the library absolutely full of people sitting there for all day long, for their own safety. And so we'll find balance. We'll find balance in those things. So.
Okay, great.
Oh, sorry.
And I know you added some tables outside,
We did.
so that was helpful. Yeah, great.
The issue that people have raised with me is when can they register for those rooms? And most of the folks I've referred to you, but I noticed that on phase 5 there is some indoor program. But just to let you know and the board know that that's the inquiry I get is when can we start registering for indoor
Yeah.
rooms. But that's just an FYI.
And it's a good question, and I've had a lot of contact. They probably came to me after they talked to you. Most of those end up on my desk. The social distancing guidelines, even though the capacity, it's a little anyway. The capacities have been lifted, so there's not a capacity like a building capacity limit, but the social distancing guidelines for seating are still in place. So, one of the things that we can have a conversation about here at some time, I know the school board went back to an in-person meeting. If we want to talk about that at some point, we can have a talk about that at the library. I don't think we could get many more than 10 people into the community room under those distancing guidelines with 6 feet. And 6 feet is still what the CDC is saying. So, would they say, oh, we're listing capacity limits on restaurants? Yes, but also no, because the seating still needs to be a certain distance from each other. And that's going to be the challenge. Normally in a community room, I was talking to one of our longtime clubs that would typically have 60 to 80 people in for a meeting. I just don't know when a meeting with 80 people in the community room is going to be allowable. Not even, the Jeff decision, just what are the current guidelines for having that sort of meeting? I don't know. So we're going to have to all explore that together. I hope it's faster. I hope it's sooner rather than later. Wouldn't that be a great world to live in? I want to live in that world. So,
we have great weather coming up so that we can push people to the using outside.
Yeah. But I feel I know the pressure and the isolation that our students are under right now. And I feel terrible about it. So we're just going to create some of those spaces as best we can without making just mass seating. So.
Do we still have the contradiction with distances as far as a determination saying it's the lesser distance in schools?
It is 3 to 6 feet in schools. Under those provisions for schools, we are still, with the rest of the world, still under the 6 feet rule.
Do we know what the provision is in like Bethlehem schools? And is it school by school or is it a global?
I don't know what limit they're holding themselves to. I do know that it's allowable as when they're masked and under the guidelines for schools that they can be within 3 to 6 feet of each other.
Okay, all right. I'm just curious.
We're waiting for that so a lot of that for us has to do with staff density. So for instance, the workroom, which you've heard me talk about several times, when we're at a 6 foot distance for the worker guideline, and that's where we're like an office. So now stop being a library for a second and think about the spaces where we're like an office. I can't get those spaces back to normal because of the current guidelines from the CDC about the distancing. We just don't have that. Well, we do have the space. The space unfortunately comes right away from the public, right? So those study rooms that we're using, we have a couple people, 3 people at least in the story hour room and the boardroom. So we're using those spaces that are public spaces for staff so we can spread the staff out.
And also, Mary, just to answer your question, we parents in the district received an email from the superintendent saying that while their guidelines had gone down to the 3 feet, she was going to keep it at 6 feet just because we were at the end of the school year, and to attempt to make that large of a change, at least in the high school, was just too challenging.
Okay. Well, that's good to hear. It will be less confusing for people from one place to another. Okay. I don't want to take a lot of time on it. I was just curious. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, Jeff, do you need a vote on the updates or?
I think it's a good idea. I think this is this is our official plan. This is what we're sticking to. And again, we come back here and we review it when the changes are necessary. But yes, I'd like it to be published and official. So.
Okay, good. I'll accept the motions on the updates to the phase reopening plan.
I have one question. Can
Sure.
we just quickly check, see if there's any public comment about this discussion in particular?
You bet.
Sure.
Nothing.
No comments. Okay.
Nothing on the budget, nothing on this.
Okay. I make a motion to accept the revised phase reopening plan as presented in the board package.
Second.
Okay, thanks, Harmeet. All those in favor, or any discussion further? Okay, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, motion's carried. Updates are effective. Okay, updates to emergency patron conduct policy.
All right, so just ignore the pieces in yellow. Those are just highlighted on the policy so that people, those stay permanently, so people know that this is the emergency patron conduct policy. Just made some changes about, we're not going to be asking people if they wear gloves into the library. We're seeing less of that, but we're not going to ask them to sanitize those gloves. That's a little bit obsessive. That's from me, fair enough. I'm less obsessive about that than I was. We're asking, because we're rolling into summer reading program, we have a lot of kids coming in. We had changed it to 12 or older. We had changed the patron conduct policy to 12 or older. We'd like to relax that back down to our traditional 9 so that kids can come and participate in our outdoor programs this summer without being concerned that they can't come into the library based on a more stringent policy. So we want to relax that back down. And then we haven't needed any provisions for outdoor programming. So we want to put that in, just put some of that language in about outdoor programs.
Okay, that sounds good. So on the outdoor programming side, I'm just reading the language here. You're talking about just applying the same policy, basically, right?
Yeah, and we're not requiring masks the second you step onto the library. People eat their lunch outside. Patrons and staff eat their lunch outside. That's fine.
Right.
But when we are creating, my concern is that we're going to be creating significant gatherings of people outside, and the librarians have lots of good plans for how we're going to make circles on the green and make spaces or tables where families can sit together and they'll be distant from the other families, but we're still going to require that people mask outside during those programs. And I know there's updated guidelines, and I hope that there's updated guidelines, and we don't need that. That's why I'm being a little bit wiggly in there about you agree to adhere to the library's mask and social distancing procedure. So that's it. If the distance gets adjusted, if the mask gets adjusted, we don't have to come back and adjust every policy to be able to incorporate those as we're changing. And
so a fully vaccinated person coming to an outdoor program still has to wear a mask.
Yeah, because we're not asking people whether they're fully vaccinated or not.
Right.
We have, in fact, had a few patrons say, whip out their Vax card and say, I'm fully vaccinated. I don't need to wear this in the library. And we're like, still got to wear your mask.
Still got to wear it.
So, so we're,
I'm
so
okay
even
with
though,
that. I just want to be clear.
yeah, you bet.
Yeah.
But not everywhere on the library grounds, just when we're gathering a lot of people together for a program.
Okay. Okay, any questions on that? Okay. I'll call for a motion then on the emergency patron conduct policy.
So moved.
Harmaine, in a second. Okay, Harmeet, thanks. All those in favor, please signify by raising their hand. Okay, any opposed or abstentions? Okay, that motion is carried and the updates are effective. The next item on the new business is library fines. So this is a item we've talked about a number of times, but
Right. So it's in our response plan that a month after we reopen, we would reinstitute fines. So I just want to say in my mind, this phase 4, even though we're not back at full operation, obviously, we are substantially open. We're open for most of our hours. We're open for most of our stuff. And I think it's hard for me to argue that we're not open for what your intention was to have that included in the plan. So I just want to mention that that would be coming, but I want to be able to give the patrons sufficient notice for that to happen. And then the other factor is, I mentioned earlier in my report, the new point of sale system that that we're hoping to get instituted. We're still waiting for what's called PCI compliance so that we can accept credit cards in the library. So I would like to wait until I get that system up and running so we could just go right into the new system. But with the idea that we set it a month out from now, we let the public know this is coming, and then keep our fingers crossed that the system gets in place so we can accept credit cards by the time we get there.
So your effective date for fines would be June 10th or whatever, June, middle of June, something?
June 10th is a Thursday. That seems kind of weird. How about the 14th?
14th, okay. Okay, yeah, no, I'm totally fine with that.
I'm just going to ask, June 14th or July 1, the beginning of a fiscal year?
Yeah, it's true. You
I'm
could do,
just throwing that out.
just roll it to July 1, yeah.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that from trustees?
I think that makes sense, July 1.
Okay. Seen some head nods there. Okay, any discussion on that? Do you want a motion on that, Jeff?
I think if we're in consensus, which it seems like we are, the fine policy exists. So it's not,
Right.
I think if you're there, that's what we'll do, and we'll get that announced out. Kristen's here, obviously. She will get that notice out. I made a promise to the public that we would give them as much notice as possible. I'm imagining there's going to be a lot of people cleaning up their long overdue holds here in the next month.
As I recall, we had quite a bit of discussion about this last time, and the clarity of, books that have been held for a long time and are short.
Yep.
The communication that was written and that went out to the public about this was very clear.
Yeah.
As concise as it could be. So I think even though it's already gone out once, I would like to see it go out again, just to remind people what the rules are with this going into place.
You bet.
Yeah, and we have all of the materials and the flyers and everything, so I can just reactivate those. That won't be
That'd be great.
Great.
And the July date gives you enough time to get the new cash registers up and running.
Yes, or come up with a sufficiently different plan to be able to handle that. So thank you. That's actually a really good idea.
Okay, so I think we're good for July 1 then. Let's move into the Juneteenth holiday.
Right. So so it's the first year we're having this holiday, and it is unlike other holidays. I don't want to overcomplicate this too much, and I'm sorry if I'm going to. So for the 4th of July, for instance, there's a holiday that moves around, right? So it's on a certain day. When it falls on a Saturday, would be closed the previous Friday for like July 4th observed, right? That's how government agencies tend to handle holidays. Wasn't my intention that we close the Friday before Juneteenth, that we would just, I wanted to just be closed on that day. But my intention is that the part-time staff would have the ability to make up those hours. The part-time staff who would normally be scheduled for that Saturday. So they could make up those hours because we're closing, and they would normally have had those shifts. And then for full-time staff, if they work a Saturday for a comp day, they get the previous Friday off. So it is not my intention that the full-time staff would get the previous Friday off. We're just closed on the Saturday. But then that creates a little bit of a weird situation on Sunday, because if a full-time staff person works a full Saturday and a full Sunday, they get the Friday off and then another comp day, a full comp day, even though Sunday's short, and that's kind of the bonus couple hours that you get for working on Sunday. I didn't want to penalize them because they're not working the Saturday because we're closing the library. So they would work on the Friday like normal, have off Saturday, work the hours on Sunday, and then they would get a full comp day for that, as if they had worked both the Saturday and the Sunday. Does that seem fair and reasonable?
I'm totally confused. I
Fine.
trust your judgment.
Right.
I'm asking the people that are working on the negotiations. Is this doing anything like setting precedent how something is going to be handled in the future? Does it matter? Is it like, just forget it?
I think it's more likely that it might get requested to be an official holiday in the contract. I think that's probably the way that would get handled, but I'm not concerned about precedent.
Okay, we're not setting precedent. Okay.
Yeah.
At this point, I trust your judgment with how you
Okay.
think it should be handled.
All right. I just wanted to make sure, just that weird Saturday, Sunday thing. I know, I'm sorry, it's a little bit complicated. I just want to make sure that doesn't sound unreasonable, and we'll go ahead and do that. So. Good. That's all I have on that.
Any other thoughts on that? Okay, I think I'm with Mary. Just I trust your judgment too. It's like
Okay.
handle it how it feels appropriate. Okay, other new business. Anyone got any new business items for tonight? Okay, old business, the pandemic response plan.
So this was the state required pandemic operations plan that we put in place. It follows the guidelines that we got from the state about what's supposed to be included and how the library would respond to future pandemics. Obviously heavily informed by our response to the current pandemic. So
Right.
That's just a requirement that we have this plan, and it's up on the website now. But is available for review, and it needs to be voted on by the trustees.
Thank you for the extra month. I read it and understand it. I support it.
Very good. Okay, thank you.
Okay, anyone else got concerns or questions on that document? Okay, I'll call for a motion on the document then.
I make a motion to accept the document as presented within the board packet.
Great, thanks, Mary. Any second?
I'll second.
Okay,
Either one.
okay. Okay, all those, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. Aye. Any opposed or abstention? Okay, that motion carries. Going into the long-range planning steering committee update. Marmy, you want to take that one?
I don't have an update from me. Jeff, anything you want to?
Okay.
Just that so we've rewritten the services plan part of this, and explain. It's been a long time. Anyway, the building master plan moves forward, and the services plan is moving forward. But they come in and they touch in significant ways in a couple places where they have to inform each other back and forth. And we're at one of those points where we need to have a discussion. So that is something we will be discussing at our next long-range plan meeting. We're certainly going to have some conversations with Paul about his response to our responses as we sort of bring that facilities plan to a conclusion. But at the same time, we're going to have to talk about, as the committee will talk about that services plan and how they inform each other. It's time for us to do that again. We just had to. That document felt really from a very different planet.
Yeah.
It was written at a time in a world that is very different than the world we live in right now. Not wholly different, but different enough that it needed a significant rewrite. So Catherine and Chris went in and spent a lot of time with their staffs going back through and sort of bringing that up to our to what we feel is going to be our current operations, and having those strategic focuses and sort of clarifying those. So we're going to have a conversation about that at the long range plan committee, and we'll that plan has been kind of waiting on the facilities plan, but now it's time. They're both going to come to their conclusion here. So.
And I saw you put a doodle poll out on the next meeting, didn't you?
Yep.
Did you get a
Yep.
good response?
We're good. I need to talk one more trustee, but I think we have a date that I think is going to work. So.
Okay, great. Excellent.
I just have a quick question. Do you have any sense when things might move to a review and discussion by the full board? I mean, are you talking about a month, 2 months, or 3 months out, or?
I would say less than 3. A month would be optimistic if we would be ready to have that for the June board meeting. I'm not feeling that, but I think we'll have something to present back. If the trustees, if the committee likes our services plan, there's some work to be done there, but I think we can have a package put together in a couple months.
Great. Just given the amount of material I suspect might be involved to review, just having as much advanced notice and material is going to be extremely helpful.
You bet. Yeah, and I think there's no reason not to distribute the draft of those as they, I'm reticent to do that right now until we get in there and have a discussion about it first. But once that happens, I think there's no secrets in there, and you know, and we can put those materials in front of you in a you know, a robust draft form.
Okay, great. Any other old business people want to raise? Mary?
I have a couple of things.
Okay.
Jeff, do we have any updates on the boiler?
No, we do not have an update on the boiler. So Harmeet and I had a conversation about this because the facilities master plan has, when we changed focus to include the curbside pickup area as a major redesign that would be in phase one, we talked, that space includes the boiler room as a major piece of that phase. I think redesigning that space without consulting with our architect and having those two things inform each other right now seems like a not great idea.
So I think at this point, it seems like we don't have any concerns about being trapped without a boiler should we have another failure in the boiler, right? We've confirmed that the parts are available on relatively short notice as well. So the immediate need, I guess, to act on a boiler replacement to prevent that scenario is reduced. So it makes sense to essentially to hold off on any other major renovation to that room, which would be required if we were going to replace the boiler, until we're clear on what else we're going to need to do with that same space as part of the curbside pickup modification.
Okay, so this is where I was hoping we were not going to be, that we were going to just wait until the boiler possibly fails. So, but I understand the logic of why we're doing it. My next question with our working theory now is, are we as a board committed that once we start talking about renovations of any kind, even if the entire boiler has been rebuilt in 2 separate phases, we are committed to redesigning that room? I mean, there are redesigns that are required for that room, right?
Yes. Yeah, in order to replace the boiler and do it in a compliant way with state ed, there's some significant architectural changes that need to happen to the room.
Okay, so my point is, I feel strongly that even if the boiler is completely rebuilt, we do not continue with the decrepit built room that it is in. We commit as a board to go forward with the redesign of that room. And possibly looking at a new boiler and replacing what has been rebuilt.
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense. Right? There's no benefit to planning to live with this boiler forever, right? And living with the room as it is forever, right? I think all we're saying at this point is we know we can live with it for as long as we need to, so we only live with it for as long as we need to, and then make that renovation part of the other renovations of the space around it.
Okay, all right.
Given what Mary said, I just want to make sure I'm not confused. Is there in any of the scenarios that the long range planning committee is looking at, is the boiler room ever going to be anything but a boiler room?
Wherever the boiler has to be a boiler room. So I don't think in any of the schemes it involves all of the changes, mechanically speaking. Taking everything that's in the boiler room and moving it to another place is absolutely possible if you want to throw the more zeros you want to throw at it. I just think it's, generally speaking, that space is going to be that space. Mm-hmm. How the boiler room is designed and the amount of makeup air that comes into that space needs some significant change to bring it into compliance. But that space is the boiler room.
Yeah. So you're saying that basically that is always going to be the boiler room, but it needs to be renovated.
Yes,
in all the scenarios.
Yeah, Yep, you got it. And it's you know, everybody that we talk to is like, wow, this boiler's old, it needs to get replaced. And I'm in total agreement. I think Harmeet's in total agreement that that needs to happen. It's you know, if it was just putting a physical boiler in there, this would have been done 5 years ago. It's that it's the architectural changes to the room that are required are going to be significant. And to do that and not when we're so close to the end of having a plan of what we're going to do all around it, you know, it can't happen in isolation. So, and it may well be able to be carved off as a separate project once we know what else is going to happen back there. So,
All right, then I'm going to go even further. I got another question.
sure.
I started thinking, how do we know the parts are going to be available? There are so many things with COVID and all the issues where suddenly things are not available. Okay. So I think my next question is, we paid something like $4,000 or $5,000 to have one half of the boiler rebuilt. Knowing that there is a decent chance the existing other half could fail in the middle of winter, do we want to entertain, go ahead and biting the bullet and paying the $5,000 or $6,000, but know that we're not going to lose that boiler and perhaps running into COVID delays? Does my question make sense?
I got you, Mary. I think when Bork came in, they had the whole thing apart. And I think if they were seeing, I think they would have been happy to tell us we need a couple more sections to replace it. The sections that failed are exactly the sections they expect to fail, right in the very middle of the boiler. That's where you get the highest heat temperatures from the flame. And you know, the world could change, but I think, you know, they're saying these sections are totally available. We could, if you'd like, I'd be happy to reach back out to them and just
I think
confirm that.
because if there's so many things that suddenly you find out with COVID, they're not available or
You got
whatever.
it.
I would like to hear what they say. If they say, if it was me and it was a public building, I'd replace the sections. For what we paid last year, I think the board might want to at least consider it.
Well, and now when it's relatively inexpensive and we don't need it so much in the summer. So I will absolutely reach out to them tomorrow and we'll just confirm that they're still very available.
I would feel better if we did that. I think
bet.
that's some minor due diligence.
Yep.
Before we leave the boiler, can I ask a question? Is the boiler in some kind of danger of failing? I'm a little confused.
I mean, it's just old.
I understand that. I understand that.
No more particular danger than its oldness.
Okay.
And I don't. Other than it's on.
We've been hearing for like 10 years, Charmaine, that we should be replacing that boiler.
Replacing the boiler.
I mean, we are really on borrowed time.
Everybody who looks at it comes in and goes, "Whoa, that thing is old." I learned on those when I first started 30 years ago. I mean, so you're getting those comments out of the workers. Again, it's a very common boiler. It's not that there are not parts available. It's not that there are not people that still work on that type of boilers. The number of people that do so is fewer. And it is incredibly inefficient compared to a modern boiler. You know, when they come in, the thing is probably 6 feet wide and 4 or 5 feet tall. They said, you're going to be stunned when you get a new boiler. It's going to sit on the pad that this boiler's there, and it's going to be like 2 feet by 3 feet. It's tiny comparatively, and the exhaust will be cool, you know, not super hot outgases, just from efficiency. So, but we did have an engineer come in and look at the room, you know, because I was like, can we just cut this thing out, put a new one in there? And they're like, when this was put in the 70s. The rules were significantly different than they are today. And when it comes to SED review, boilers are one of those things because they sometimes blow up. You know, ours is inspected every year by the insurance company as is required. So, you know, that's because they're a inherently more dangerous item than a table. So, yeah.
All right, thank you. I defer to the construction professionals and what they say. I just want to make sure we're asking the questions.
Thanks, Mary. I appreciate it.
And I have one other quick thing that I wanted to mention. Sherry and I have been talking. She's been doing some research and work on the investment policy. she and I are probably going to get together in the next couple of weeks, and then we'll probably be looking to meet with the finance committee before the June meeting. So I just want to let people know that's coming down the road. So Sherry's been working diligently on that. So I think we're going to have a product to for the committee and possibly to bring a report back to the board with some information.
Great.
Great, that's helpful. Okay, any other old business people have? Moving into future business, any future business people want to mention tonight? Any issues or concerns on the board? Anyone wants to raise?
Just down the line, maybe some, if in fact the board is going to consider being a library that institutes fines or assesses fines or goes fine free, what parts of that discussion, what's needed as part of that discussion? And how do we frame it? What kind of data? I mean, and for me, what kind of history is behind the discussions that have already been had, and then what kind of data might be helpful if in fact we're going to be doing that. And I have been asking that we do at some point, but maybe having some brainstorming of what information do we need, and also helping me catch up with what kinds of discussions have you had already.
Catherine has got data for you. I mean, what's interesting is that unlike before, when we're talking about something that's theoretical, we have examples of fines, no fines, open, not open. So we can look at that and sort of see the effects of all of those things on, rates of materials returned and stuff. So there's a lot of data for that. So.
And we have discussed it several times, just in my tenure. Yeah.
So, Charmaine, maybe we'll talk offline, but are you talking about a session or a brainstorming meeting or a conference call to talk about if we want to do this, what do we need to do? Or
I think it's more if we're going to have if in fact the majority of trustees decide that we want to have yet another discussion, Michelle, on it. What are the components of that discussion? What do we need in order to have an informed discussion? And then if someone wants to take me aside, I don't know if it's Mark or Jeff or anybody else wants to just say, okay, here are the last 5 discussions we've had in a nutshell. But what I was asking for, Mark, was if the majority of trustees saying, yes, we are willing to, or we would like to move forward with it in a future discussion about fines and perhaps ending in a decision that is different than what we currently have, what are the components of that discussion? What do we need in order to inform that discussion? Does that make sense? I'm not sure if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think
Okay.
I understand. Okay.
Yeah, I'd agree. I was thinking this earlier. I feel like this is probably a good time for us to touch this subject again while we're currently fine free before we decide to bring them back if it's coinciding with in June or with the new fiscal year, right? And especially with our current budget number, I think we've, what we're expecting to get from fines, what we've budgeted is a pretty small number at this point. So this would be a good time to decide to go fine free if we decide to go that way.
I wasn't necessarily proposing a timeline that if the other trustees feel that's reasonable, that's fine with me too. I just was saying, it would be helpful if a group is A, are we going to do it? And B, if we are going to do it, let's all just have a session where people say, well, this is going to be helpful for me, or I'm going to need this as part of that discussion. So.
Well, we could talk at the long range plan committee. Maybe that's a component to be talked about as part of that strategic vision. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, great. I think that's a good way to approach that to start. And then any other concerns or discussion items for the board? Okay, any public participation, Jeff?
Go back and look.
Okay.
No.
Okay. I think we're going to move into executive session now.
Okay.
So we have to.
So we'll need a motion. To move into executive session for the purposes of discussing contract negotiations pursuant to Article 14 of Civil Service Law. If someone were to make just a motion.
Said motion.
All right. Second. Okay.
Second.
Great.
Have a good night.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye.
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 Thank you.
Wait, did you guys vote?
Yeah, so we need a vote on the motion. Quickly, all those in favor? Any opposed? Okay. Any abstentions? Motion carried. Moving into executive session.